This is the Horse-Human Connection, a captivating podcast where we extend into the world of equine assisted learning, horse training, and gentleness in working with these magnificent creatures. Captivating stories from the leading professionals and ordinary people alike unravel novel ideas in being with horses. The Horse-Human Connection is an idea, a place, and a voice. The idea is to support the quiet revolution and recognize the intelligence and true nature of the horse. The place is a destination farm near the Umpqua Forest and River that slows down visitors and patrons enough to experience the shift. The voice is this podcast. Welcome to today's episode.
Hi, this is Ishi with the Horse-Human Connection Matrix. I have a guest today. I have Asha Wolf with me, who is an animal communicator and energy healer. Thank you for joining me today, Asha.
Thank you for having me, Ishi.
I've really been enjoying the newsletter by your horse, James. Can you tell me a little bit about how that got started?
Actually, so James is my horse that I've had since 2014, and we're in a phase of our relationship now where I'm not riding him anymore. And it had been coming up for a while because he had a pretty bad injury. And I got little whispers from him about he wanted to leave a legacy. He wanted to be able to share his wisdom with others, and he wanted something that would last. He called it a legacy. And then he started giving me little images of what that could possibly look like. So he actually is the one that's responsible for these weekly Wisdom with James little blogs and Facebook posts. And it's something that he's been kind of pinging into my field, if you will, for a while. And it wasn't until about, I guess we're on week 29, I think now, so I guess 29 weeks ago, I finally said, okay, I'm ready to commit, because it's a weekly commitment. So, but he is the one that is responsible for those weekly posts.
And you and James have been together for a long time.
So we met in 2014.
Mm-hmm. And were animals talking to you before James came into your life?
They were. I've been so involved with, I guess, my former career or my other career that I'm still doing a little bit of, which is, I have a doctorate in physical therapy, and I've spent my entire life actually working with people. I started, working with people and teaching when I was 18. So it's just something that I've always done. There have been times when I've gotten little messages or impressions or an image that an animal might have given me. And so I always knew that it existed. And I always knew that I think that it was possible for me to do. And it was something that I kind of felt like, well, when the time is right, I'll delve into it more, or I know I'll do that in the future. It was kind of like part of me knew that that was coming, but I didn't push it. I didn't really get super interested in it. It was just kind of something that was there in the background. But what was so interesting was there would be people that would meet me and they would assume that I could do it. Like it's like they picked up on something and they would say, "Oh, well, can you tune into that cat?" And I'm like, "Well, I've never done that before." And they're, "Oh, but you can do that." And so then I would just do it, and I would receive a message and then I would deliver it to the person. And so there's always been something kind of interesting about that. Like, if how like I was obviously wearing that in my field and people would pick it up and they would know more than I did about my abilities to do it.
So were you working in some kind of healing field or in some kind of a work that relied on your intuition or psychic abilities, or how would, I mean, I'm sure it didn't happen while you were sitting down with your accountant. I mean, you must have been in a context where people would think such a thing.
Well, I was in the dance world, so I grew up as a ballet and modern dancer. But I've always been interested in like what else is out there. So, even though I was seriously into ballet and modern, I was also looking at some of the fringe aspects of movement, like getting into Feldenkrais and Alexander technique and body mind centering, and doing these exploratory workshops about movement and being in the body at a very young age. I remember doing these kind of workshops at the age of 16. So all my peers are seriously just into the ballet, and I'm like, well, I love that, and I'm going to go over to this modern dance studio downtown with all these older women in their 40s and 50s, and I'm going to roll around on the floor and see what's there. So I've always been really interested in that. So I think that really opened up a doorway for me of possibility. I remember just doing these different workshops with with people, and we could explore things that were, I remember like being asked to dance from my blood or dance from my bones, and there would be different qualities when I would embody what I would think of as the energy of our bones in the body, as opposed to the energy of our blood in the body. So it sounds kind of wacky, but
It doesn't sound wacky to me at all. In fact, I had forgotten that we have this in common. You mentioned it the first time that we talked, and I had forgotten about it. And you've hit on something. The dance is so important because it's missing from our culture. And as I've been studying all this stuff about primitive cultures and activities that they do for brain health, and I want to say for deepening intuition and even other abilities, like dance is important to that. And the type of dance that you're talking about is not mainstream,
yeah.
but it's the type of dance that will make every dancer a better dancer. And it is going inside and experiencing movement on that kind of level.
Yeah, I actually feel so grateful for that time in my life. And, my parents were very open in the fact that, yeah, if you want to go take that class, that's great. And I just feel very lucky in that small town in a Midwestern state that that existed, and I was
Wow.
able to actually experience that. It was really kind of life-changing, although I didn't know it at the time. And so I brought that right into my dance and my choreography when I was in New York City. And I think I've always just kind of had a thirst for, what else is out there, how else can we explore? Mm. So, moving into the horse world, it was really the same thing for me. It's like, well, these are the methods that are often used, but how else could we approach, this subject matter with horses? Or how else can I approach, this sentient being in front of me?
I definitely see the connection and have felt it too. There's a saying in ballet, freedom through discipline.
Mhm.
And I've always thought, like, well, that's true, but there's also freedom through freedom, which is the type of movement you're talking about. And when I think about the disciplines in the horse world, meaning different riding disciplines, there's freedom through discipline in the upper levels, but it's not the same as, communication with horses in a way that you can form a partnership. And one of the things that has been really interesting, like my top podcast is the one about co-created rides. And all of these things feed into that. Like, how do I be in my body, be in movement, be present, and connect with the horse or another dancer for that matter, if we're just talking about that in general, and create from there. Like there's this essence that happens. Yeah.
I was thinking back to your comment about, freedom through discipline. And then you said there's also freedom through freedom. And I'm like, well, if I had to stay with the freedom through discipline idea,
Mm-hmm.
what would that mean to me with horses?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about like, well, when I was asked to move from my bones and then move from my blood or move from my lymphatic system, like the discipline is in my ability to train my mind to go there, to like to, journey into my bones on an energetic level. That takes discipline and focus and intent. And
Mhm.
in doing that, oh my gosh, this whole world opens up and I experience freedom. And I think there's a parallel to that with horses in how do I choose to approach my horse, regardless of what I'm doing. And that takes a lot of discipline and patience and skill and intent, to maybe not go the normal way of things with the horse and to do something a little different.
Did you have a moment or a series of moments with horses and with whatever training you had as an equestrian rider where you bumped up against the tradition and said, no, I'm not going to do it that way, or no, that feels wrong?
I did initially. It was interesting because I was actually exposed to horses through natural horsemanship. But there was one individual that I was learning from. She was very young, and I actually witnessed things that I didn't think were okay. And I was like, wow, I know there's another way. So I did experience that, but I also learned an amazing amount of stuff of how you can connect with a horse on the ground. Like I actually had more training on the ground initially before I really got into riding. So I did love that connection. And I was like, how can I carry that, into riding and into, more of what I want to do with horses.
Was that a tradition or a technique, or what was the training on the ground that you're talking about?
She just used a variety of techniques from different horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just, it was more just that learning how to connect with that horse and just how little can you move to get what you're wanting to experience with that horse in that moment. That idea of less is more, that those little invitations, those little asks versus
Mm-hmm.
that big telling, right?
Because that's how they talk to each other with
Exactly.
with micro movements. So it's learning, slowing down and learning more of their language.
Yeah. And then it was like, just like, wow, I wonder if I can just think it. Right. Like, those moments when we're writing and we feel like, oh my gosh, I just thought it and he did it. Right. And we know that on some level, there's been some micro movements that have happened in the body because the body is registering our thought and our intent. But at the same time, it's like, I just thought it. And those are just those magical moments.
Yes, they are. And I think that's what a lot of people want to know more about. How do I get there? How do I get there with my horse? And that's with the co-created rides, those are the moments that I've had that are just so amazing when we're able to open up. But that's not necessarily like I can say we're able to open up, but that's actually a pretty big thing.
To me, it's all about listening. We get so busy and so big telling the horse what we want. And to me, it's all about listening. And it means listening to myself, listening to my body so that I know what is it that I'm really saying to my horse. I might be thinking something. What is my body telling my horse? Right. And is that the message I want my horse to receive?
Mhm.
I got to listen to my own body and then listening to their body. And it's not even just the body, it's the energy field. It's like when I get on a horse, like I don't want to feel separate. It's like we're one body. And.
So the images that keep coming to mind, and it popped into my head as you were talking about dance too, is contact improvisation. You're familiar? Okay. So for people that are listening that don't know what contact improvisation is, it is where you're creating a dance spontaneously, and there are a couple of small rules about touching. You stay in contact the whole time, either rolling a point of contact or leaning against each other so that if one person left, the other person would fall. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because at some point, when I started learning about connecting with horses in this other way, I wanted to dance it contact improvisation with my horse in the round pen. And of course, horses don't move that way. They're not going to like lean into you the same way you lean into a person. But there's something about that that feels a little bit about what you're describing.
Well, I've never explored contact improvisation with the horse, like on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I could relate that to in the saddle,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Like the approach of how do you get there reminds me of the contact. I know I'm a little out in left field, but we know I'm mildly autistic, so I'm going to take that pass.
I thought about the contact improvisation earlier. I just didn't bring it up into the conversation. So I'm with you.
Yeah, there's something about when you approach contact improvisation, you're two people and you are, or two beings, and you're agreeing to come into contact and create movement together spontaneously. So I guess that's like the mindset of going on a co-created ride is you're getting on your horse with permission, with a strong intention to go create together, to move together.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Like I think to me, that's what every ride we have the opportunity to explore, because, our bodies are different every day, and the horse's body is different every day, and each moment in time is different. So when we get on the horse to co-create together, it's like, I wonder where we are today. How are you feeling? How am I feeling? What's the energy in that we're playing in today. And so it's never the same. It's like we always think about, like, when we're on the yoga mat, it's like no downward dog is ever the same, really, because we're not the same in each moment in time. And that's why it can stay fresh. We can do a zillion downward dogs in our lifetime and it can never get boring. If we
Right.
choose to be present, if we choose to explore, if we choose to breathe and see all that's there in the moment. And we have that same opportunity with the horse.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And that downward dog analogy is so fresh for me getting back on the mat after having back surgery a year ago. Because it's definitely a different downward dog. It's a different three-legged dog. And I'm very much enjoying how it's playing in my body in the different places. So yeah.
And yeah, that's a good thing to mention because it's like, oh well, I'm thinking about like me as teaching someone in yoga or physical therapy, and it's like, the common response for someone like you that has gone through back surgery and you get onto the mat, and it's so easy to compare ourselves to what we used to be able to do or what it felt like before versus like, okay, this is where I am right now. This is how it feels right now. This is my downward dog right now.
Mhm.
And can we do that with our horses too? As our horse changes, it's like, oh, my horse doesn't do that anymore. Okay, but what is this horse offering today? And how can I partner with that?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have a new horse.
I do. I did not grow up with horses. I was one of those adults that learned to ride. And and so James was my first horse, and he's definitely my heart horse or soulmate or however you want to describe it. But as he has shifted into retirement, I'm like, I really would like to be able to partner with another horse under saddle,
Mhm.
because I really like that experience. And so I wasn't sure what I was going to do in getting another horse. I had never shopped for one before because James just was there at the barn, and there's a story there. But I rode him before I bought him. So, but anyway, it just popped into my field to check out Colorado Horse Rescue. So, a rescue organization not that far from where I live. And I got on their website, and before you know it, I have a horse. She's not young, but there's a journey there for me, obviously. She is going to need some body work and some support that way.
Mhm.
So, and she told me that she chose me. So I'm like, okay. So already I'm feeling a bit of a responsibility to offer her what she needs so that we can thrive together in partnership. So I think as her body starts feeling better, there's going to be some magic there. She's a sweetheart,
How
and
old is she?
she's 15.
Uh-huh.
She's a mare, and I love it because she's expressive.
Mhm.
And she's also expressive when something hurts her body. She's not going to be the gelding that just kind of pushes through it. She lets me know, and I'm like, okay, so how can we do it differently today where it doesn't hurt? And let's get you some body work here and get you body work there. And I've been doing some animal communication with her to find out, okay, so I understand you're sore here, but can you tell me, do you remember the very first time that you felt pain? And can you show me where that is? Because, we have this cascade of compensatory, pain sometimes. And it's like, well, that's fine to treat, the right side of her lumbar spine, to help her with her canner transition. But is that where it's really coming from? You
So
know,
when you trace back the pain to its original injury or pain point in the body. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you're working on her yourself. Is there a tradition for horses that you use? Or are you just intuitive, or do you take what you know about human body work and
Kind of all of the above.
all of the above?
And,
Okay.
and then I hire people to help do like that, the official acupuncture and chiropractic treatments. But I do like a lot of fascial work, cranial
Mhm.
sacral work. I know a little bit about the medicine method. I can do some chakra balancing, and then I can do like what's called kind of like a touch point therapy, and then I just go with my intuition
Mhm.
and listening to the horse and looking for her communication with me to let me know what she wants.
Her feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that animal communication piece is really helpful because if you can tune in and hear it from straight from the horse's mouth, no pun intended, like it's so helpful. It's
It's a
like,
lot less guesswork. Like I'm guessing my horse has not wanted me to get on her back the last two times I've tried. She's been very like stomping her back foot, like, no, I don't want you riding me. And I'm scanning her body, but I can't figure out exactly, what it is. So I just do some general stuff and respect her. But I miss riding too. And it's a hard place to be. So I'm glad she chose you. What is her name?
her name is Lady.
Lady.
So
Aw.
it sounds like a great name. And she was off the track way back.
Oh.
Name was little Isabella then. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And she's definitely has some history. I think there's a PTSD loop running. There's definitely some emotional trauma. There's definitely some trauma visible on her body. So, it's interesting to unpack that with time.
It is. I'm my trainer, my horse trainer, who is a human trauma therapist. We're not working together now, but I was fortunate enough to be able to work with her for 3 years and watch her rescue horses off the track and treat their PTSD. And it was amazing. It's just, I have a video clip somewhere of her taking this horse that was triggered and staying on the horse's back and riding out the whole thing, and then coming to rest, coming to a stop and resting and self-regulating together. And when the horse dropped down into normal regulation, she then got off. But it was a beautiful thing to watch. It was just amazing. So yeah, you and Lady have some fun journeys ahead of you and some meaningful connections, I'm sure.
It's very interesting. It's definitely a step up for me in my horse skills and abilities. James, I always just knew he just regulated his nervous system so easily and well. Like
Mhm.
just self-regulates all the time. And and Lady struggles with that.
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, it's definitely being present in a very different way with her.
Yeah.
I have to
I
be.
I don't know that much about the racetrack, but I'm just curious if there are horses that come off the racetrack that don't have PTSD.
Well, I don't know where she got her PTSD. I haven't explored it that much yet, but she did show me an image and I'm like, oh, okay. That explains a lot about being, she can't handle even being near a place where you would tie a horse up.
Mhm.
Like I can't even drape the rope over it. Like even just walking up to a hitching post, she just goes into high alert, like she's ready to panic. Even if my energy is so calm and I'm being very careful to, really regulate my nervous system, just seeing it,
That's
knowing,
cool.
knowing, I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, I've come across a couple of people here in the county I live in who have trained horses by tying them up or confining them and only bringing them like water, a small bucket of water once a day. Like that's going to teach them what they know to stand still. I'm like, I can't wrap my brain around that kind of cruelty, but it's an accepted practice in a lot of places.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely stuff that she hasn't shown me yet, but she did show me a pretty not so great image. But my going back to the racetrack, it's like there's no I don't know if it happened there. I mean, there's a lot of years. There's 12 years between the racetrack and today.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what happened and where and when. So but she's a sweet girl and there's definitely some try in her and there's already been a couple really pretty amazing moments.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So when you work with horses, when you work with people as a healer, as an energy healer, you have a lot of tools at your disposal. And as I was thinking about our interview this morning, I was wondering, like, where did you start? Like, where did that education of energy healing start? And then what prompted you to grow it? Because like a lot of people will take one technique or tradition and work in it, but you have such a variety.
I've never really wanted to commit fully to any particular camp or
Mhm.
any particular grid, we'll call it, because I think that there's beauty and validity in so many different things. And so I love to just say, oh, I like that piece and take that piece from whatever and pull, just pull from different things. I think that we limit ourselves and we limit our possibilities when we only choose to go into one methodology. To me, that feels limiting. That's, like just take whatever we can get from different places.
Mhm.
Um,
And if you've been at junctures where it seems like the two things are in opposition or they don't go together or there's some incongruence, how do you navigate through that? Or has that not really come up?
I don't think that's really come up. I'm not one to brood in my mind about something. I'll just like flow with it. And then if it doesn't resonate for me in that moment, I'll just flow with something else
Mhm.
versus judging it or labeling it or trying to define it. I don't know if that makes sense.
It sounds like an absorption process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just take what resonates and so if I'm working with a horse, or even when I'm working with a person or a cat or a dog, it's just whatever is needed in that moment. When we gather information and we gather our skills, I think there comes a point when we don't even necessarily know what came from where anymore. It's just what we know to be our truth
Mhm.
and what we've experienced. We can go all the way back to like say, someone's childhood. Maybe that's where, we first learn to be, to develop a sense of being empathic. Maybe because we had to survive, the environment we were in, right? And we learn those skills at a very early age, and then we can turn them into gifts of how we work with people or animals, today.
There's, you're a very wise woman, and I've appreciated so much of what you've said, and how you see the world, and all of the different things that you do and dabble in, and how you have helped me and how you help other people. I've got I got a thing I'm struggling a little bit with, and maybe you have some words of wisdom for me about it. And it's a little about what you were just talking about, the way we see the world, like the way I see the world compared to the way other people see the world. Like I'm pretty solid in my perceptions, but when they're so vastly different than other people's, and it causes conflict, sometimes I'm not quite sure what to do about that.
I know it's not easy at all, but I always like to think about if about how I can just see the other perspective and with a sense of curiosity.
Mhm.
Kind of like, I really don't believe that at all. It's not my truth, but
Mhm.
I wonder like how they got there. Like maybe it's turning it to like just being curious with how that person's life or experiences led them into that particular belief.
Mhm.
So that we open up our curiosity versus acknowledging that, oh my gosh, I don't believe that at all. They're completely different than me. Like that just kind of closes down any sort of place of connection.
Mhm. Yeah, so you're saying staying in the curiosity can lead to some compassion, but still staying very strong in your own convictions and truth.
Sure. It's like, I think if we know what we know, if we are grounded in our own truth, then it's not threatened. It's not like we don't worry about like like when someone says, "Oh, I don't believe in animal communication," I'm like, "Yeah, cool, I get it." Like, it's kind of weird. It's out there. It's hard to define, hard to explain, but I can just say that's fine, that's cool.
Right,
You
right.
Um,
That helps. Thank you. I mean, just putting it in in that kind of context and thinking about a particular situation, that is quite helpful.
and I think also it's just, like noticing if we get triggered, if it riles us up in some way, and then being able to turn and say, I wonder why. Like just turning the curiosity even back on ourselves and say,
Mhm.
oh, I wonder why that upsets me. Or what, like exploring it in that way too.
Mhm.
But I get it. It's hard in the moment. It's like, oh, we have our reaction or our response to something.
Yeah, there's some things that are definitely trickier than others for sure.
And going back to horses, it's like, when we have a moment, where it brings something up for us, and it's like, oh, we get, there's moments we get frustrated, or, we feel like, oh, I'm not good enough, or whatever the emotion might be around the horse. And it's at that moment, again, can we just step back and go, okay, I'm getting emotionally affected here. Let me take a breath. This is not serving me or the horse. Let me find my feet. Let me reground. Okay, now I'm ready to step back in to the energy of the horse and see what we can do together.
Yeah,
It's
those are really,
that ability to constantly self-reflect and self-observe and call ourselves out even, with compassion. Like, oh, okay, with compassion. Oh, you're getting triggered. Oh, you're okay. Let's just take a moment.
yeah, part of awareness and on the road to self-mastery with all of that. Yeah, I mean, that's what it takes, is being present and being aware.
Mhm.
Horses are great teachers of that.
And that's a challenging journey. You know, it
It
takes
is.
a lot of courage, a lot of bravery, and a lot of compassion.
What is your favorite thing to do?
That's my favorite thing to do of
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. Just what's your favorite thing to do?
Oh, I have so many favorite things to do. I can't choose just one.
Okay. Well, in your work, what is your favorite way of well, let me change the question. If you had a mission statement for your time here on Earth, what would your mission statement be?
To help humanity come back into their bodies and to acknowledge and trust the wisdom of their own bodies, to feel the intelligence that resides in the cells of their body.
Yeah.
That would change the world.
Yeah, it would. Getting some goosebumps on that one. So you've heard me talk about the quiet revolution in the horse world, right? You've heard me talk about that. Do you feel like you're part of that?
I do. I'd like to think that I am. But yeah, I do. Because I'm always looking for another way.
Mhm.
I'm following, to my best of my ability in each moment. I'm following my breath and I'm following the horse's breath.
Some really good tools, very usable tools that we've talked about today, whether it's in life or with your horse, and ways of looking at things. I so appreciate our conversations. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or anything else you'd like to say?
Well, when you had asked me like what are my favorite things to do, and then you said, "Oh, well, let me ask you about your work," and then we went into the mission statement. But I kind of wanted to say, if you ask me what my favorite part of my work is right now,
Mm-hmm.
is it's when I get a new animal client.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a box of chocolates. I don't know what I'm going to get. And I feel I feel like a little girl. It's so fun. I sit down with the picture that the person has forwarded to me of their animal, whether it's a cat, a dog, a horse, or whatever, a cow. I've done some interesting ones too. And it's just like, oh, I wonder what they're going to share with me. I wonder what they have to tell me. I wonder what's important to them in their world. Because one of the first things I always ask is, what do you want to show me? What do you have to tell me? And I give the animal the floor. And I just love those first moments when I capture their personality and I hear what they have to share. And, even it's always so beautiful, even those hard ones where someone's pet is nearing the end of their life, or I'm talking to a pet that's on the other side,
Mhm.
and what messages want to come through still. It's always so fun and so exciting and rewarding and humbling. Like, it's such an honor.
Yeah.
I think that's what I want to
And
say.
if people want to reach you for that or for some of the other work you do, where can they find you?
They can go to my website at ashawolfhealing.com. So that's ASHAWOLF, just like the animal, healing.com.
Okay. Wonderful. Great. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. Well, I so appreciate you making time to chat with me today and also appreciate all the work we've done together. So I guess it's time to say see you later.
Thank you so much, Ishi. This was delightful. I had a lovely time talking with you. This was great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Bye.